Hi guys, welcome back to another YouTube tutorial. This one I'm going to be doing a Lord Exorcist from the army Stormcast Eternals from Age of Sigmar. This one I did enjoy playing because it actually only took me a few hours to do. So that was quite entertaining actually, it's quite quick, easy. So I'm probably going to do a lot more smaller miniatures just to fill in the gaps prior to the big miniature uploads. So to start off with, I did spray this one differently to the previous two videos because I sprayed it with Chaos Black. So only because it helps keep things dark. The first lot of paint I'm going to be using is the Retributor Armour, and that is going to be mainly all of the armor plates, so just to get nice and gold. I'm probably not going to dull these down like with Nuln Oil or anything like that because I do like how it turns out nice and bright and pops out. Looks really good. Start off with again, I'm going to be using a wet palette and I'm going to be using a medium base brush. So the reason I'm using a medium for this, I know it's a small miniature, but this part does not need to be neat at all. It is just to get most of the gold on, so it'll be, which is pretty much most of the model anyway. I always do the trusty hand pinchy thing, just to get the brush into the nice point that I need. That, if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, I do pinch the brush all the time. It saves people putting it in the mouth because that's very unhygienic. So everything from like the chest plate to the knee pads, boots, top of the staff helmet, all things like that, I'm going to be painting gold. I've even done the back of the book, which you'll see later on, gold as well. So just everything this guy owns is gold, so he must have it going good for him. Now I found when I was painting this, it did need a couple of coats of the gold, but the end result is much better than if it was just one thick coat, because you don't lose detail then, and it gives a nice smooth finish on the paint. So just go over all of the armour, making sure it's all covered. I do skip forward again shortly because no one's going to want to see me paint the entire model, which would take a couple of hours video when it only really needs to be a half-hour video. There you go, so I skipped ahead a bit now. Make sure. Now again, I had to do a few coats on like the boots as well, just so completely covered and it weren't too streaky. There you go, so that was all the gold done. I personally think that looks quite nice. Gold itself, obviously we will be going over different colours as well. So it won't just be black and gold. So, as always, I've got my trusty drink with me as I'm painting. Can't go without it. Now, instead of going over the whole miniature with the base paints first, I'm actually going to go on to dry brushing this gold with the Necron Compound. Now, I'm going to be using a medium dry brush for this. So just because you don't need a large one, it's only a tiny miniature. as always with the dry paints that you're doing, a decent amount on the brush and then pretty much wipe it all off. So until you get basically nothing coming off the brush anymore. Doing that just gives a nice shine around the edges, highlighting. Now I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it on this video, but it does, you will notice when you dry brushing it does catch the higher areas a lot better, so it becomes more brighter, so it's like the light is bouncing off of that bit a lot easier. So yeah, just completely going over with all the Necron Compound, what I've just painted gold. Boots, knee pads, absolutely everything like that. So with this miniature, it isn't actually mine, I'm actually painting it for somebody else, and they've asked if I could leave the base black, so I won't be basing this one. So as you can see, the dry brushing is near enough done now. So see if the camera focuses. There you go, so it highlights all the higher areas a lot more. Just gives it that nice shine as well. Make sure this brush is clean, so you ain't got to worry about damaging your brushes or anything. So the next part I went on to was the Macragge Blue, and that's going to be for as well the armour, but not as much. So we're going to make it so the gold is going around the outlines of the armour mainly, and it'll be like the inside of his cape and things like that really. So again, as always, wet palette, and with this one I'm going to be using a small base brush. So obviously they're going to be finer details, and you're going to want to be a bit more careful when painting this one as well. See, what I really like about this miniature is it's quite powerful for just a single piece. So like, just this one model has 4 attacks, and it's 3s and 3s to hit. Oh, drop my pen there. So each hit has a -1 rend as well. So it is quite a powerful miniature, especially just being, as I said, a single item. So especially against, if there are any kind of demons or night haunts or anything like that, in like the shooting phase, things like that, you can roll a dice on a 4+. That unit suffers 1 mortal wound, so it can do quite a bit of damage in game with this as well. You will notice the cape on this tutorial does change completely near the end. Reason for that being I was going to try something, but I thought it would work out a lot easier when I get my airbrush through. So I do change it. It's pretty simple how I paint it, but you will see that it changes because it'll be blatantly obvious. It goes from blue to white. But yeah, so now as you can see, the cape is completely blue at the moment. That will change. I've done part of the shoulder pads, the robes that are hanging down the front, and like the shin pads, different things like that. So when you're doing the shoulder pads and everything, you do need to be very careful. If you want to keep the raised elements on the shoulder pads gold as well, I mean, if you want to go over in blue, you can do. But I like to have them so they stand out a bit more on the blue. Now the blue's done on it, I'm going to go over to a Corax White. The reason I'm using Corax White is because I like how it gives a nice clean white, whereas you get a lot that have like slightly off-white, things like that. So, but I'm going to be doing part of the robes on the front. And yeah, I think that's it. The pages in the book, things like that. Another thing that I've just found out about the Lord Exorcist is that for such a tiny model, it has 5 wounds, 9 bravery, and it is on 3+ to save. And that is quite good for something like this. Really does help out, especially being quite powerful. So yeah, the brush I use with this one is a medium detail brush. So as you can see, I've done all the cape on the front and the pages. Oh, and the spell coming out of his staff. So that I've also done white because I am going to be going over that with a Hex Race Flame later on. So that's all the Corax White done. Now as you can see, very small bits. Again, that was me improvising on the cape, but that changes. I think so far it's looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with this. So there you go. Moving on now to the Hex Race Flame. Start off, I'll show you the brush on the video in a sec. There you go. with a very fine detail brush. The camera does struggle to focus on something so small. There you go. And that is just to get in the writing details on the side. So you'll see what I mean as I do it, as I lift it up to the camera, but that just helps instead of going over any lines, things like that. This bit was quite tricky. I mean, you don't need to do it if you don't want to, you can just leave it white. But I just like to make things awkward for myself. I try to add in extra detail that doesn't actually need to be there, but each to their own. So with using the Hex Race Flame and a small detail brush, you need quite a bit on, but not too much. If you had too much, it's just going to drip and go over all your nicely painted model. Yeah, so I've moved on to a medium layer brush now, just for the larger white areas, just to get a bit more coverage. Just makes it easier, because you wouldn't want to go over that with a fine detail brush. That would take forever and a day. But as you can see, it does stand out from the miniature as well, so it makes it quite nice. Compared to the gold and the blue, that bit really does stand out a lot. Yeah, so I think so far that's looking pretty good. I mean, I added a couple of squiggles on the pages just to make it look a bit like writing, but that was just me having a bit of a mess around with it, see what it looked like. So, moving on to the Khorne Red now. That is just going to be for the handle of the staff. So, and that's the only thing I believe I'm going to darken down with the Nuln Oil. Yeah, so at first the red does look a bit like in your face, but like I said, I'll be going over that with some Nuln Oil shortly just to darken it down a bit, because I really want the green to stand out compared to the rest of the model. So I think having just like the one thing stand out looks much better than having it all shiny and new. If anybody has any suggestions on small miniatures such as this that they'd like to see me do a tutorial for, feel free to leave it in the comments and I'll see what I can do. See if I can get hold of one and paint it. So I prefer painting the smaller models because you can smash most of them like quite a bit more out than one of the larger models. Although finishing the larger models, there is some sort of satisfaction with it, which I quite like. Yeah, so that's the red staff done now. So, as you can see, that is the only thing that was red on there. Haven't gone over it with the Nuln Oil yet. But there you go, you can also see I've changed the cape. I thought it looked a bit better like that and made the back of it stand out quite a bit. So, but once I get my airbrush through, I will be having a bit of a practice with that. Seeing what I can do with that. Then go on just to like colour the face in, like the skin basically, with the Rakarth Flesh. Because he has got a helmet on and his face is very tiny on this miniature, I do use a fine detail brush. That just helps not go over any of the lines. So no one wants this. No one wants that at this point in time. Now, when I was doing this bit, I did think to myself that I probably should have done it a bit earlier on, because this was very tricky to get in the tiny gap that there was. Trying to make sure I didn't go over any of the gold or blue, anything like that I'd already painted in the tiniest of faces. Yeah, but as you can see, I did manage it. So, looking a bit pale, but that's just the lighting. It actually looks a bit darker than that in person. Clean the brush with that. I think all that's left to do now is the Nuln Oil on the staff, and then recoat the base. So obviously I've got paint on the bottom of it. Yeah, so just completely covering just the handle of the staff. I don't want to go over anything else because I like the colours how they are at the moment. I like how they've turned out because I've done the dry brushing on the gold, things like that. That would be, I think it'll look quite nice when it's finished. The base will be painted black and everything. And that is the Lord Exorcist done from the Stormcast Eternals. As I mentioned previously, I did really enjoy painting this one. Like, it's got quite a bit of gold on it, and I do like that for these Stormcast Eternals. If you did like this video, feel free to leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you soon. Cheers.